The Age of War, Chapter 2, Beta, is finally here. Let's go through the patch notes. So the Age of War Chapter 2 Beta is now currently live. As Andy said in the Funcom dev stream, you just basically go on Steam and look for the beta client, basically. I'm sure you've already seen it if you've downloaded the game on Steam. It's obviously, the beta is not on console. It'll be available on the September the 21st, as they announced. I don't know if Andy was going to, but he basically did say, I don't know if they planned that, but he did say the 21st. It seems that it's going to be live. So yes, let's go through patch notes. Okay, so patch highlights: Purge rework, yes, as we know, that's the big thing, and a loot revamp. So the Age of War is kind of a build-up, isn't it? First chapter was all about treasure, gathering loot, so that you could be purged based on how much your treasure is worth. And then chapter 2 is a complete purge revamp. And then chapter 3 is going to be sieges, where we siege the enemy, which is very exciting. We don't know very much about that yet. Tower defense, Conan, yes, very exciting. So yes, purge rework and loot revamp. So purge rework, protect what's yours, and you purge rework. Trigger a purge, protect your coins with purge difficulty that scales with your wealth. Win and be rewarded handsomely. So then the loot revamp, which is one thing I have been super interested in, because the loot in camps, NPC camps, dungeons has been kind of boring for a very long time. It's been like plant fiber and sticks and things like that. So now it's going to be contextual. So if you go into a Darfari camp, you should find Darfari things in loot boxes. And I assume in the loot chests, just like chests in the camp. And then when you defeat a Darfari, you should find there's a chance that they will drop. They said that. We're going to read that in the patch notes probably, but they did say that there's a chance to get the things that they're wearing and the equipment that they're using. Okay, so patch notes. Purge rework. Let's talk through this. So the purge will now be triggered manually by the player through the Proclaim Wealth button in the new coffer interface. You got to place your coffer, and then basically if you ever played Sipter, the coffer will now act like the convergence trap used to, in that same kind of way. It's your way of bringing on a purge. Okay. New coffer interface can also be used to sell treasures in your coffer for gold coins, if that's what you want. Initiating a purge will cause a Stygian forward operating base to spawn nearby and begin sending waves of enemies to assault your base and steal your treasure. They were saying that they were going to be testing on the beta, during the beta, any problems with that forward operating base spawning. So bear that in mind. Make sure you do your testing and feedback if ever anything doesn't work. Because they will need our bods to kind of like test that out. To trigger a purge successfully, there must be a valid path from outside your base all the way through to the coffer. Should this path be destroyed or blocked, the purge will retreat. So you don't have to worry now about purges spawning inside your base if it can't access what it needs to. It just will fail and it'll tell you that. Thralls can now be assigned to guard any doors in-game to help you defend from new purge. Simply assign a thrall while hovering over one of the ghosts that will appear, showing the lit assignment slot and confirming. It's going to be a placeable item that you can place on, say, crenellations for an archer or a fighter. It means that they won't move from that place. Purge difficulty is scaled to the amount of treasure inside your coffer. Okay, so more loot, better quality purge, better rewards. After a significant portion of your treasures are successfully stolen, the attacking army will retreat victoriously. You will lose. I don't know what that exact percentage is or how much is likely to be left. We'll have to test it. Including enemies which will attack using the all-new battering ram, yes, which we just saw in the dev stream, weapon to punch through your base even faster. So if you see a demolisher, as they were called on the dev stream, somebody with a battering ram, you better take those guys out. Because they will just keep bashing until they've gotten to your treasure and until they have broken your treasure. So that's kind of a concern we have to focus on. Repel enough waves to trigger the Stygian boss of the camp to reveal himself and join the fight. Killing the boss will end the purge, dropping keys to loot the forward operating base's reward chests and release any captives that have been taken by the Stygian army. Meaning that you'll win, okay? Because there will be cages there that you can open, just like on Sipter, you can free some people. Captured prisoners that are released inside the forward operating base can serve as your thralls, as well as a chance for a special prisoner, mercenary captain, who will act as a temporary store in gratitude to sell you special items to help you in future purges. This includes mercenary banners that will spawn mercenary allies to assist you in battle. Now, I'd like to test this during the beta testing that we're going to do here. I didn't see them able to interact with those people or change their gear or anything like that, but it seems that you can place banners as these reward banners, and they will kind of insta spawn in a bunch of people around them. That's kind of cool. I like that idea. Loot rework. Okay, I am very, very excited about this. I've been kind of banging on about this all through chapter 1. I'm really, really excited. Obviously, they have kind of taken with one hand with the legendaries no longer being repairable. We want more loot. We want better loot, more fun things. We want, you know, stuff you discover in the game to be more exciting. So now NPCs have a chance to drop their actually worn equipment and weapons. That sounds cool. Camp chests now grant better, more interesting, and more usable loot. Gone are the days of finding plant fiber and stone in chests. In addition, loot chests are now much more contextual and will grant you Dafari related loot, there you go, while in a Dafari camp, etc. Various interactables can now be found in some of the camps. This already was the case for Sipta, but we now have added several interactables to camps in the Exiled Lands as well. So on Sipta, there are certain areas of the map, but there's loads of places where you'll just randomly discover some armor, like an armor stand. You can pick up the helmet, you can pick up the shield, that kind of thing. And they're going to be adding it to Exiled Lands as well, which is going to be pretty cool. Definitely early game if you can find those places, pick them up and equip them. Dungeons have been tweaked to fit this paradigm as well. The loot and dungeons are now more exciting, and dungeons have had several tweaks to them in order to make them more interesting, adding optional bosses, adjusting loot drops from bosses, adding traps, and so forth. I can't wait to find those. Legendary chests no longer spawn in the world next to so-called world bosses. Instead, you may find legendary chests at the end of dungeons. There has been a change in the rules recently on official servers to mean that blocking world boss spawns and chests is no longer against the rules. Well, now it's interesting because the chests are no longer going to be out in the world. On Sipta, if you've played Sipta, chests, when you kill a boss, there's no chest nearby. You have to go to either around the Tower of Sipta or into a vault, which is the Sipta dungeons, to find a legendary chest to get your legendary weapon. So now we're going to have to go into dungeons to get our legendary weapons. And this will defeat some of the cheese that we get. So if you just go kill a croc boss with some daggers at the very beginning of your game, as I have done before, you can no longer equip yourself with a legendary weapon unless you go into a dungeon to get it. So that's like a little bit more difficult. For modders, the structure for loot tables has been modified, and now it's possible to generate loot based on item gameplay tags. Old loot chest blueprints are now deprecated. They do still exist, but we recommend using the ones in the game system's loot new instead. Okay, this is good. The Library of Esoteric Knowledge and the Void Forge in Sipta no longer grants completely random recipes. Instead, the system is deterministic and will give you a recipe that you do not have. So what we used to do is we would go into the Unnamed City or into the wine cellar and we would get fragments of power. We would go to the Library of Esoteric Artifacts in the Unnamed City and we would click on the wall, wouldn't we? And for each of the fragments of power, we'd be granted a scroll, and it was completely RNG which scroll we would be given. And they would give us recipes for some fun weapons and like placeables and things in the game. And you would get duplicates, and you could kind of, if you were playing with other people, you could stick them in a box, trade them with your friends, give them away to other players. That was okay-ish. If you were a solo player like, you know, me when I'm doing my streams, it didn't really help, and you'd kind of, have to deal with dupes. It's kind of annoying. Now they will be granted to you in a very specific order every time for every single person. So the same will apply for Sipta. Obviously in the tower in Sipta is basically where the Library of Esoteric Artifacts is located. So you basically click on one of the stands with the equipment in them and they grant you scrolls as well. So it's just going to be the same on Sipta as in Exiled Lands. Black Ice, I didn't know about this one. Okay, Black Ice weapons no longer require hardened steel weapons as a crafting ingredient. Okay. So we'll have to see how that's crafted. Black ice weapons are crafted in the Temple of Frost. Usually you either pick up hardened steel weapons from the, what are they called? The Frost Giants in the Temple of Frost, and you can stick them in the forge once you've defeated Hurgnir and clicked on the lore stone that teaches you the recipe for the forge. So we'll have to see what's required for that now. Added various grinder fluid press recipes for plants and seeds that did not have them before. Okay, interesting. We'll have to see what that entails. Balance updates. Right. Okay, I feel personally called out by this next change because I go on about Steel Theud constantly. It's one of my favourite things. Steel Theud perk now prevents your character from taking more than 33% damage per hit instead of 25%. So my favourite build is to run around with max grit, max agility, so that I can run naked up to the arena champion, and if she hits me, because usually she pretty much negates all your armour, she can't take more than 25% of my health in one hit, instead of two-tapping me in full, like, heavy, epic armour. So now it's going to be no more than 33%, so she can kill me in 3 hits instead of in 4 hits, right? So, okay. That's okay, isn't it, really? If you're on a server and there's a little bit of lag, sometimes she can get a couple of hits on you pretty quickly. So now will take her 3 hits. Voidforge is basically the equivalent to the Library of Esoteric Artifacts on Sipta. Last Stand now lasts 3 seconds, reduced from 6. Bows now do less damage the further the arrow travels, so there'll be some fall off to the damage. Damage reduction based on how far it goes. We'll have to test how far that is. So you can't kind of cheese and snipe from really far away outside of aggro range. I think that's probably what it's about. Orbs will now detonate instantly on impact, regardless of light or heavy attack use. Okay, speaks for itself. Javelins and missile weapons have had their damage increased. I presume this is because people generally don't use projectile weapons very much like those. They want to increase their usage. Let's test it. Priests can no longer summon a god bubble. So the god bubble, god protection, is out of the game. So god avatars will now last 10 times as long, but do 10 times less damage with their attacks. So gods have been nerfed hugely in terms of kind of, I guess, burst damage. They do a lot of damage, don't they, obviously? That's really going to affect people in PvP only. I mean, unless you just like going around memeing with a god destroying Separu, which we've done on this stream. It's now possible to relinquish control over an avatar by pressing the crouch button. So you're no longer, once you start the avatar summoning, you're not going to be locked into that for the full duration if you want to get out of it. Trebuchet health has been increased from 5,000 to 10,000, so it's harder to destroy. And the crafting times for trebuchets have been greatly decreased, so it's going to be much quicker. A total of 10 minutes for the whole trebuchet. So you can chuck them up as quickly as possible and use them to attack. Non-explosive barrages now also do a small amount of splash damage. Let's go on to combat fixes. Thralls and NPCs will now face their original place direction after returning to their post. Okay, that's good. So if you ever had like thralls that got triggered by somebody nearby, they would run away. When they came back, they'd be facing the wall and you'd have to kind of manually turn them around. I'm happy about that, personally, especially when I've arranged people for a video. Yes. NPCs will no longer be locked into the same attack if the player moves out of their range between attacks. Is that more like a bug fix, really? I think so. Greater pets with skins will no longer deal less damage than their default counterparts. Okay, that was definitely a bug. Speaking of bugs, let's go on to bug fixes. So at the beginning of the dev stream, they addressed the invisible animals issues with console for a good while now. Apparently since sorcery, correct me if I'm wrong, there has been a problem with invisible animals on console. Elephants particularly is the one thing I've heard a lot of comments about, where you will see the eyes and apart from that, and they will do the damage, but you just can't see the animal. Apparently this is a problem with middleware used to ship the game. They are working on that and they're going to hopefully get it sorted ready for the full patch when that comes out onto live, which they've said is going to be September 21st. So hopefully for September 21st, the animals will no longer be invisible. Fingers crossed. There also is a crash problem with Sipta, the Isle of Sipta. I've been doing an Isle of Sipta playthrough, and on the south of the island, there's some crashing issues, I believe because of the Fractured Citadel rendering issue. So that is also on their list of things to fix. Okay, rhino mounts. I didn't know about this. Rhino mounts have lost access to the Cloak of Invisibility and should now be visible. I haven't seen any invisible rhino mounts. Attempting to create a clan using a name that is already taken will no longer prevent the player from creating another clan. Okay, just a bug. Sims Kopesh now has a proper description. Akbitanan throwing knife is now properly marked as a legendary item. Star metal ore now lists the recipes for star metal ingots in its item description. Players can now spend attribute points more quickly. And what I'm hoping for this is, I feel like on console we were able to just spend up to the next perk quickly. I'm hoping for that. I will be very happy if that's the case. The Stygian Commander set now is properly marked as heavy armor. Oh, there's a couple of sets that are incorrectly listed as either light or medium. So hopefully those have been fixed. Let's look for that. Damage from white mini-bosses in the wine cellar has been reduced. Okay. Sandstorm damage is now listed in the stats paid debuff entry for players on dedicated servers. Added a map marker for the exit cave of the passage dungeon. Okay. Made recipe book at the end of the Dregs dungeon visible. Okay, so the recipe book on the ground after you defeated the Abyssal Remnant, I assume it was just randomly invisible. That's a bit of a nightmare. I hadn't noticed that, but I guess I wouldn't. Changed move and guard thrall icon. Gave the boss the moss rocknose. Oh, do they mean moss rocknose? Are they talking about rock branch? Or do they mean the boss rocknose? I think they mean the boss, right? I've never heard of a moss rocknose. It's attacks back, okay. Ask the Warmaker Clail politely but firmly to remain standing. Interesting. I haven't seen that bug. Fixed issue where red lines would appear in the direction the player was facing when using Shift-Delete shortcut on building pieces. Hadn't seen that either, but great. Removed outdated and deprecated loading screen tips. Cool. Updated icons for moving and removing placeables and thralls to make them more consistent. Letting go and re-grabbing a wall will no longer repeatedly play the equip animation. Ah, yes. Yep, so because obviously once you're climbing... I'll have to test that, I suppose, because when you're climbing, if you sort of like pause for a second, it does kind of quickly whip your weapon back out again, doesn't it? Fixed visuals in Crystalline Visage boots. Players no longer take damage when jumping above the sandstone fence. Does that mean you can now climb over sandstone fences? I have questions. Slashing visual effects of one-handed swords is now properly aligned with their model during sprint attacks. Okay. Totemic wolves are now properly visible when placed. Dismantling legendary items will now give back 100% of their dismantle value, regardless of durability. Brilliant. Okay, perfect. Sandstorm will no longer spawn inside the Sunken City dungeon. I am so relieved about that. It was so immersion breaking to suddenly get a sandstorm, you know, underwater, or even just when you're at the Watcher. What is he called? The Watcher. Was it the Watcher above? Tools no longer damage resources that they cannot harvest. So I have to test like axes on stones and things. Okay, items and equipment. Fix an issue where after removing a master reinforcement kit with a prying kit, no further modifications could be applied to the item. Okay. Fixed description for Tablet of Power. Fixed description of Yellow Lotus Potion. Poison Arrow is now named Noxious Gas Arrow. Black Ice Shield and Hardened Steel Shield now require shield frames as part of their crafting recipe. Fixed an issue where the Impaler had too low durability, which was 400, and is now 4,200 as intended. Lowered the weight of the Poitain Heavy Lances. Decreased stats for Steel Weapon Journey Rewards. Increased stats for Perfected Heavy Steel Sword Journey Reward. Okay, cool. Achievements and Journey. The Homesteader Journey should now unlock after completing the first journey of a map. Brilliant. The O Sleeper Awake achievement trophy can now be properly completed, even if the relevant journey is not active. New challenges are implemented on... Okay, Battle Pass. Right. So challenges have been implemented now in the Battle Pass in line with the new purges. Defeat one strong player-focused purge enemy. Goodness me. Defeat 5 strong player-focused purge enemies. That is a mouthful. Defeat 10 strong player-focused purge enemies. Defeat a purge wave. Defeat all purge waves. Defeat a purge boss. Okay. Performance and stability. Optimize memory and network usage. And then exploit fixes. Users can no longer duplicate items by exploiting slow connections. Okay. Thanks for watching. You can find me live streaming my Age of War beta gameplay on twitch.tv/AnnaBriella. Stop by and say hi.